Captain Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the blue and green world of Kepler 442b spin slowly below them. The trade station orbiting the planet looked like a small city in space, with ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many arms. Some ships were sleek and silver like human vessels, others were strange shapes that hurt the eyes to look at too long. But the most beautiful ships belonged to the Villani. They looked like living crystals, catching and bending light in ways that made rainbow patterns dance across their hulls. When they moved, they seemed to sing in colors that had no names. "Signal from Ambassador Kim, Captain," said his communications officer. "She's ready for the morning briefing." Hyunwoo nodded. So young Kim had been the human ambassador to the Villani for 10 years now. She knew their culture better than almost any other human alive. She spoke their musical language and understood their strange but beautiful ways of thinking. The main screen flickered to life, showing Kim's face. Behind her, Hyunwoo could see the crystal spires of the Villani embassy. Even through the video link, the walls seemed to pulse with soft, warm light. "Good morning, Captain," Kim said. Her smile was genuine, the kind that reached her eyes. "The Villani Council wants to discuss the new trade agreements today. They're very excited about sharing their shield technology with more human colonies." Hyunwoo felt a warmth in his chest. 15 years ago, when humanity first reached the stars, they had been alone and afraid. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers they did not understand. Then the Villani found them. The first meeting had been an accident. A human exploration ship had mechanical problems near Thesara Prime, the Villani homeworld. Instead of ignoring the distress signal or treating the humans as invaders, the Villani had helped. They fixed the ship and invited the crew to their world. What the humans found there changed everything. The Villani were peaceful beings made of living crystal who created art with light and sound. Their cities looked like gardens made of gems. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of war. They believed that all thinking beings were connected by something they called the Great Song. "Tell them we're honored by their trust," Hyunwoo said. "Our engineers are still amazed by how their shield generators work." It was true. Villani technology seemed to work by asking energy to behave differently, rather than forcing it. Human scientists called it impossible, but it worked anyway. The Villani just smiled their crystal smiles and said it was about harmony, not control. The door to the bridge opened, and Dr. Jaemin Lee walked in. The xenobiologist had spent more time studying the Villani than anyone else in the fleet. His research papers about their unique biology were famous throughout human space. "Captain, I just got back from Thesara Prime," Jaemin said. His eyes were bright with excitement. "The Villani scientists want to invite human children to their learning centers. They think our young ones could benefit from their meditation techniques." This was how it had always been with the Villani. They shared everything freely. Their knowledge, their art, their friendship. They asked for nothing in return except that humans try to understand their ways of peace. "Dr. Lee," said the tactical officer, "didn't you say the Villani children sing mathematical equations?" Jaemin laughed. "Not exactly. They express mathematical concepts through harmonies. It's beautiful, really. They see numbers and equations as music waiting to be discovered." Hyunwoo had visited Thesara Prime once 3 years ago. He still remembered walking through their crystal forests, where trees made of living gems sang in the wind. Villani children had followed him around, their crystal bodies chiming with curiosity. They had no fear of strangers, no concept that anyone might wish them harm. The thought made his stomach twist with worry. The galaxy was not always a safe place. There were species out there that saw kindness as weakness, peace as an invitation to attack. The Krell hegemony was the worst of them all. "Captain," his communications officer said suddenly, "we're getting reports of Krell fleet movements in the outer systems." Hyunwoo felt cold fear settle in his chest. The Krell were everything the Villani were not. They were massive reptilian creatures with 6 limbs and teeth like knives. They lived for war and conquest. Their empire had swallowed dozens of worlds, turning peaceful planets into military bases. "How close to Villani space?" he asked. 3 systems away, sir. But they're moving in formation. This isn't a patrol." Ambassador Kim's face appeared on the screen again. This time she looked worried. "Captain, the Villani Council is asking about increased Krell activity. They're concerned. The Villani didn't really understand war. They knew it existed, the way humans knew about diseases they had never caught. But they couldn't really believe that anyone would choose violence when words could solve problems. "Tell them we're monitoring the situation," Hyun-woo said. "The Terran Defense Force has ships in the area." But even as he said it, he knew it might not be enough. Humanity was still young in galactic terms. Their fleet was small compared to the vast armadas of the older species. If the Krell decided to attack, the humans might not be able to stop them. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "should we move closer to Thesara Prime?" Hyun-woo thought about it. The Indomitable was a powerful ship, but against a full Krell fleet it would be like a paper boat in a storm. Still, the Villani were humanity's friends. More than friends. They were like the wise older siblings humans had never had. "Yes," he said finally. "Set course for Thesara Prime, best speed." As the ship turned toward Villani space, Hyun-woo looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krell fleet was moving. He could only hope they were wrong about what it meant. In his heart, though, he already knew. The Krell had finally decided that the Villani's peaceful ways made them an easy target, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop what was coming. The last message from Thesara Prime came 3 hours later. It was a single Villani word that meant both goodbye and gratitude. Then the communications went silent and the stars themselves seemed to weep. Admiral Soo-Jin Kang stared at the video screen in her office on Luna Base. Her hands were shaking. In 30 years of military service, she had seen many terrible things. Wars, disasters, the aftermath of pirate raids. But nothing had prepared her for this. The footage had come from a Krell broadcast sent across all known space frequencies. They wanted everyone to see what they had done. They wanted the galaxy to know what happened to those who were weak. Thesara Prime was gone, not just conquered. Not just occupied, destroyed. The crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years were now nothing but glittering dust. The singing forests were silent. The lakes that had glowed with bioluminescent life were dark and empty, and the bodies. 3 billion Villani, all dead. Men, women, children. The Krell had not spared anyone. Soo-Jin wiped the tears from her face. She could not remember the last time she had cried. Her staff had never seen her show such emotion. But watching the footage of Villani children lying still in what had once been their schools, it broke something inside her. The door opened and Captain Dong-Hyun Nam walked in. His face was pale and his eyes were red. He had been leading the investigation team, gathering evidence of what the Krell had done. "Admiral," he said quietly, "you need to see the full report." Soo-Jin nodded. She had been expecting this. The public footage was bad enough, but she knew there would be worse details that the Krell had not broadcast. "Tell me," she said. "They didn't just kill them," Dong-Hyun said. His voice was barely a whisper. "They tortured them first. The Villani are naturally empathic. They feel each other's emotions. The Krell used this against them." Soo-Jin felt sick. "How?" "They forced families to watch each other die. They made parents choose which of their children would be killed first. They turned the Villani's ability to share feelings into a weapon." The room was silent for a long moment. Soo-Jin had fought in 3 wars. She knew that soldiers sometimes did terrible things, but this was not war. This was something else entirely. "The worst part," Dong-Hyun continued, "is that they recorded everything. Not just for propaganda. They enjoyed it." The Krell soldiers were laughing. Soo-Jin stood up and walked to the window. Below, she could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. Somewhere down there, President Tae-ho-yoon was preparing to address the United Earth Assembly. The entire human species was waiting to hear what their leaders would do. "What about survivors?" she asked. "A few thousand, maybe 10,000 total across all the colonies. They're scattered across different worlds now, but..." Dong-Hyun paused. "Admiral, they're broken. The Villani who escaped are like ghosts. They barely speak. They don't sing anymore." Soo-Jin closed her eyes. The Villani had always been defined by their music. They communicated through harmonies and saw the universe as one great song. To steal their voices was to steal their souls. Her communication console chimed. It was a priority message from Earth. President Yoon's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had just a week ago. The weight of what had happened was showing on everyone. "Admiral," the president said, "I need an honest assessment. What are our military options?" Soo-Jin had been preparing for this question. "Sir, the Krell hegemony has over 4,000 warships. We have maybe 800 if we count every vessel in the fleet, including support ships. In a direct confrontation, we would lose. What does the Galactic Council say? Sujin's jaw tightened. They offered their thoughts and prayers, and suggested we consider this a local dispute that doesn't concern the broader galactic community. The president was quiet for a moment. Sujin could see the anger building in his eyes. Local dispute, he repeated. Yes, sir. 3 of the council species have already signed new trade agreements with the Krell. They're calling it maintaining neutrality. The truth was even worse than that. The galactic community was terrified of the Krell. Most species had small fleets and peaceful cultures. They survived by staying out of the way and hoping the Krell would ignore them. The destruction of Thesara Prime was a message to everyone. This is what happens to those who are weak. Admiral, President Yoon said slowly, what if we ignore the odds? Sujin looked at him carefully. Sir? What if we don't care about winning or losing? What if we only care about making them pay? For the first time since the massacre, Sujin smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Then we have options, Mr. President, many options. Over the next 6 hours, reports came in from across human space. The response was unlike anything in human history. When the call went out for volunteers, every human colony responded. Miners left their asteroids. Traders abandoned their routes. Scientists put down their research. The message was simple. Our friends need justice. On the research vessel Harmony, Commander Woo Jin Choi received new orders. Instead of studying nebula formations, he was told to map every Krell military installation within 50 light years. The orders came with one additional note. Prepare for total war. Similar messages went to every human ship, every station, every colony. Factories that had been making farming equipment switched to producing weapons. Shipyards that built cargo vessels started working on warships. Universities that studied peaceful alien cultures began analyzing Krell weaknesses. The few surviving Villani tried to stop it. Elder Prism of Dawn, one of the last council members who had escaped the massacre, sent a message to Ambassador Kim. Please, the Elder sang in their musical language, do not seek revenge. This is not the Villani way. Violence only creates more violence. Kim sat in her quarters watching the message replay. She had dedicated her life to understanding Villani culture. She believed in their philosophy of peace. But she also remembered the footage of Villani children, still and silent in their destroyed schools. I'm sorry, she whispered to the recording, but this is the human way. Across human space, the mobilization continued. President Yoon's speech to the assembly was broadcast to every human world. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of an entire species' anger. They killed our friends. They murdered children. They destroyed a culture that had never harmed anyone. The galaxy does nothing because they are afraid. So be it. If the galaxy will not stand for justice, then humanity will stand alone. The last line of his speech would be remembered forever. They wanted to show the galaxy what happens to the weak. Now we will show them what happens to those who hurt our friends. Admiral Sujin Kang received her final orders that night. She was to take command of the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. The mission was simple. Make the Krell pay for what they had done. As she prepared for war, Sujin thought about the Villani children who would never grow up to sing among the crystal trees. She thought about the gentle beings who had welcomed humanity with open arms and asked for nothing in return. The Krell had made a mistake. They thought humanity was like other peaceful species, afraid to fight, unwilling to pay the price for justice. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing fire. Fleet Admiral Minho Bay stood in the command center of the battleship Thesara's Fury, watching 2,000 human warships prepare for battle. It was the largest fleet in human history. Every ship had a name that honored the dead Villani. Every crew member carried images of the crystal children who would never sing again. The target was Nexus 7, a Krell forward base 3 systems from where Thesara Prime had been. Intelligence reports said 500 Krell ships were stationed there. The aliens thought they were safe behind their shields and weapons. They were wrong. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Captain Young-Soo Park from the bridge of the destroyer Vengeance. His voice was calm, but Minho could hear the anger underneath. Every human in the fleet felt it. The cold rage that came from watching friends die. Begin the attack, Minho ordered. What happened next shocked the galaxy. The human fleet didn't follow normal battle tactics. They didn't try to disable enemy ships or force surrenders. They came to destroy completely and totally. The first wave hit the Krell defense platforms. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed almost crazy. They ignored return fire, focusing only on dealing damage. When the UES Retribution took a direct hit that killed half her crew, she kept fighting until her reactor exploded, taking 3 Krell ships with her. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "Krell Command is requesting negotiations." "Tell them no," Minho said simply. This was not a normal war. There would be no prisoners, no mercy, no chance to surrender. The Krell had chosen to make this personal when they murdered children. Now they would learn what personal meant to humans. Colonel Yunji Han led the boarding parties that attacked disabled Krell ships. Her Marines didn't follow the usual rules of war. They moved through the alien vessels like a force of nature, turning corridors into charnel houses. When they found Krell survivors, they played recordings of Villani children singing their last songs before the massacre. "Let them hear what they destroyed," Han told her troops. "Let them know why they're dying." The psychological warfare was Dr. Hyejin Cho's idea. She had studied human military history and found inspiration in the darkest chapters. Humanity had always been good at war, but they had usually held back. Not this time. The Krell pride themselves on being apex predators, she explained to the fleet commanders. They think fear is a weapon only they can use. We're going to show them what real fear looks like. Human ships began broadcasting on all frequencies as they fought. The sounds were recordings from human history, the screams of victims from ancient battlefields, the cries of parents who had lost children, the songs of warriors preparing to die. But underneath it all was something worse, human laughter. Cold, merciless laughter that said the humans were enjoying this. Captain Na Young Park commanded a converted mining ship called the Hammer of Justice. Her vessel had been designed to break apart asteroids for their metals. Now she used it to literally throw rocks at Krell formations. Chunks of metal and stone moving at incredible speeds turned proud warships into twisted wreckage. "Target the command vessel," she ordered her crew. "Let's see how their admiral likes having a mountain dropped on his head." The Krell tried to adapt. They sent faster ships to attack human supply lines. They used civilian shields to protect their installations. They even tried to retreat to defended positions. Nothing worked. Humanity had spent its entire history perfecting the art of violence. Every human child learned about wars fought with sticks and stones, with swords and guns, with bombs that could destroy entire cities. Now they brought all of that knowledge to the stars. When the Krell used civilians as shields, General Kyung-Hoon Lee responded with surgical precision. His ships would broadcast warnings to evacuate non-combatants, then attack with weapons so accurate they could destroy military targets while leaving civilian areas untouched. "We're not monsters," he told his officers. "We don't kill innocents, but we will kill every single Krell who chose to wear a uniform." The battle for Nexus 7 lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 500 Krell ships were destroyed. 0 had surrendered. 0 had escaped. The base itself was nothing but floating debris. Human losses were severe. Nearly 300 ships destroyed, 30,000 dead. But the humans didn't seem to care about the cost. They just kept coming. Word of the victory spread across the galaxy in hours. Other species watched the battle recordings in horror. The humans fought like beings possessed, accepting casualties that would have broken any other fleet. War leader Gralmox of the Krell Third Fleet sent a report to High Command that would be studied for years afterward. "They fight like the ancient legends speak of demons. No mercy, no fear, no limits. They sacrifice themselves gladly if it means killing more of us. We have awakened something terrible." The Galactic Council called for emergency sessions. Representatives from dozens of species demanded that humanity stop their campaign of revenge. They spoke about the horrors of unlimited war, about the need for civilized rules of engagement. Admiral Sujin Kang's response was broadcast across known space. "You were silent when our friends were murdered. You did nothing when children were tortured. Now you complain because we fight back? The time for your words is over." Commander Hyun-Soo Kim introduced a new terror to the galaxy: ghost fleets. Unmanned ships programmed with simple orders: find Krell vessels and destroy them. These robot hunters spread across Krell space like a plague, appearing without warning to attack supply convoys and patrol ships. "Every Krell who chose to serve their empire is a target," Kim explained to his programmers. "Military rank, ship class, location, none of it matters. If they wear the uniform, they die. The psychological effect was devastating. Krell crews began to desert their ships rather than face the ghost fleets. Others surrendered to any non-human vessel they could find, begging for protection from the mechanical hunters that never stopped, never slept, never showed mercy. Intelligence officer Song Yi-yoon studied the intercepted Krell communications and found something unexpected. Fear. Real, deep terror that went beyond normal military concerns. "They're not just afraid of dying," she reported to Fleet Command. "They're afraid of how we'll make them die." The Krell have always been predators, but now they're learning what it feels like to be prey. The campaign continued across a dozen systems. Human fleets struck at Krell positions with a creativity that amazed even their own commanders. They used gravity weapons to turn suns into weapons. They hijacked Krell communication networks to broadcast the dying screams of alien crews. They turned captured Krell ships into guided missiles aimed at military bases. But perhaps the most terrifying human innovation was their complete disregard for traditional limits. Where other species fought with rules and honor codes, humans brought total war. Every Krell military asset was a target. Every Krell soldier was marked for death. There would be no peace until justice was complete. As reports of human victories reached Earth, something changed in humanity itself. The gentle species that had been welcomed by the Villani was gone. In its place was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. They had learned to hate, and they were very, very good at it. The war had been going for 8 months when the Krell made their biggest mistake. At the manufacturing world of Terminus, they surrounded their weapon factories with civilian housing. Millions of non-military Krell families lived in the shadow of the great gun foundries, believing the humans would never attack. General Kyung-hoon Lee received the intelligence report while his fleet waited at the edge of the system. His officers looked at him expectantly. Terminus produced the heavy weapons that Krell fleets used to destroy planets. It had to be stopped. "Sir," Captain Tae-sung-won said carefully, "the civilian population numbers in the millions. Our weapons can't destroy the factories without hitting residential areas." Lee studied the orbital scans for a long moment. The Krell had been clever. They knew humans tried to avoid killing innocents. They thought this would protect their most important military production. "Open a channel to the planet," Lee ordered. "All frequencies." When the connection was established, Lee's voice echoed across every communication device on Terminus. His words were translated into Krell language by the ship's computers. "Citizens of Terminus, you have 1 hour to evacuate all civilian areas within 50 kilometers of military installations. After that time, we will consider every life lost to be the responsibility of your military commanders, not ours. We do not wish to harm the innocent, but we will not allow the guilty to hide behind them." The response came from Krell Defense Command within minutes. "Humans do not have the precision to avoid civilian casualties." "You are bluffing." Lee's smile was cold. "In 58 minutes, you'll learn we don't bluff." What happened next became legendary among human military forces. The attack on Terminus lasted exactly 1 hour and 37 minutes. When it was over, every weapon factory, every military depot, every soldier barracks was reduced to smoking craters. The civilian areas remained completely untouched. Human targeting systems had evolved far beyond what other species thought possible. Weapons that could thread the needle between a military target and a daycare center just meters away. Bombs that could destroy a bunker while leaving the hospital next door without a broken window. "Precision is just another word for caring," Lee told his staff afterward. "We care enough to only kill those who deserve it." The effect on Krell morale was devastating. Their entire strategy of using civilian shields collapsed overnight. Worse, their own population began to turn against them. If the humans could destroy military targets while protecting civilians, it meant the Krell military was actually putting non-combatants in danger by hiding among them. Captain Na-young Park had moved beyond throwing asteroids at enemy fleets. Her mining ship Hammer of Justice now carried a new weapon, converted cargo haulers filled with construction materials. She would position these ships near Krell formations, then detonate them remotely. The explosions sent clouds of metal debris flying at incredible speeds, turning space itself into a weapon. "Every piece of scrap metal becomes a bullet," she explained to her crew. "Every broken pipe becomes a spear. We're turning their own space into a killing field." The Krell began to understand they were facing something unprecedented. War leader Vashkul sent increasingly desperate reports to High Command. "The humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They adapt to every tactic we use. When we try to hide, they find us. When we try to run, they hunt us down. When we try to defend, they turn our defenses against us. Intelligence Officer Song Yi-yoon had been studying intercepted Krell communications for months. What she found was a military force slowly going insane. Krell crews were reporting nightmares about human ships appearing from nowhere. Others spoke of hearing the voices of dead Villani children during quiet moments. They're developing what human psychologists would call trauma responses, she reported to Admiral Kang. The Krell species has been dominant for so long, they've never experienced sustained fear. They don't know how to cope with it. Commander Hyun-soo Kim's ghost fleets had spread across 3 sectors of Krell space. The unmanned ships had evolved beyond their original programming. They now worked together in packs, sharing information and coordinating attacks. Some had even begun modifying themselves, adding weapons salvaged from destroyed Krell vessels. The ghost ships are learning, Kim told his superiors. They're becoming more than just automated hunters. They're developing something like tactical intelligence. The psychological warfare was working better than anyone had hoped. Entire Krell garrisons surrendered without fighting when human fleets appeared. Others simply abandoned their posts and fled to neutral space. The proud warrior race that had terrorized the galaxy for generations was falling apart, but the humans weren't satisfied with just breaking Krell morale. They wanted to send a message to every aggressive species in the galaxy. Admiral Sujin Kang authorized Operation Prometheus, named after the human myth of stealing fire from the gods. The plan was simple and terrifying. Human special forces teams would infiltrate Krell research facilities and steal their most advanced weapons technology. Not to use it, but to turn it against them. The Krell would literally be destroyed by their own creations. Captain Sung Min-oh led the first Prometheus mission against a classified research station in the Korth system. His team of 30 Marines infiltrated the facility during a shift change, moving through the complex like ghosts. Remember, he told his troops, we're not here to fight. We're here to learn. Every piece of technology we steal is another weapon we can turn against them. The mission succeeded beyond expectations. The humans captured not just weapons blueprints, but tactical manuals, strategic plans, even psychological profiles of Krell leadership. Within weeks, human engineers were building improved versions of Krell weapons and using them against their creators. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated capabilities that seemed impossible. The humans weren't just winning, they were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. Species that had considered themselves advanced began to question everything they thought they knew about military technology. Other galactic powers started to reconsider their positions. The Zephyrian Trade Union, which had signed new agreements with the Krell after the Thessara massacre, quietly began moving their fleets away from Krell space. The hegemony of Vor suddenly discovered urgent diplomatic business that required all their ambassadors to return home immediately. They're scared. Ambassador So-young Kim reported from the neutral station where she was monitoring galactic reactions. Not just of what we're doing to the Krell, but of what we might do to them if they get in our way. President Tae Ho-yoon's approval ratings among human colonies reached unprecedented levels. His daily war briefings were watched by billions across human space. When he announced that the fleet was preparing for the final assault on Krell space, entire planets celebrated. Our friends asked for nothing but peace, he said in one broadcast. They were given death instead. Now we will give the Krell something they understand, the consequences of their choices. But perhaps the most significant development was happening within humanity itself. The gentle, curious species that had first reached the stars was evolving. They were becoming something harder, more focused, infinitely more dangerous when threatened. Dr. Jae-min Lee, the xenobiologist who had once studied Villani meditation techniques, now worked on ways to make Krell soldiers afraid of the dark. Scientists who had devoted their lives to peaceful research now designed weapons of psychological warfare. Artists created propaganda that turned the enemy's own fears against them. We're changing, Lee admitted in his personal log. The question is whether we can change back when this is over, or if we'll even want to. As the human fleets gathered for the final push toward the Krell homeworld, the galaxy held its breath. Everyone knew what was coming would reshape the balance of power among the stars. The humans were no longer the peaceful newcomers who had been welcomed by the Villani. They had become something else entirely. the species you called when the monsters needed to be stopped. And the monsters were about to learn what that really meant. Supreme Admiral Ji-Hoon Kang stood on the bridge of the flagship Thesara's Revenge, staring at the massive world that filled the view screen. Vorthak Prime, homeworld of the Krell hegemony. 15 billion aliens lived on its surface, protected by the most powerful defenses in known space. Today, those defenses would not be enough. The human fleet that surrounded the planet was the largest military force in galactic history. 3,000 ships from every class imaginable, battleships that could crack moons, carriers filled with fighter craft, support vessels converted into weapons platforms, and hundreds of ghost ships, the unmanned hunters that had terrorized Krell space for months. "Admiral," reported Captain Yan-Su Lim from the engineering deck. "The resonance weapon is ready for deployment." Ji-Hoon nodded. The weapon was Chief Engineer Lim's masterpiece, born from captured Krell technology and human ingenuity. Instead of trying to break through the planetary shields, it would turn the shields themselves into a weapon. "Signal the fleet," Ji-Hoon ordered. "All ships to take positions. Begin Operation Final Song." The name was chosen deliberately. The Vellani had called their culture the Great Song, believing all life was connected by invisible harmonies. Today, humanity would sing the last verse of that song. It would be a song of justice. The attack began with a single transmission broadcast across every frequency on Vorthak Prime. The voice belonged to President Tae Ho-yoon, speaking from Earth across the light years. "People of the Krell hegemony, 1 year ago your military chose to destroy a peaceful world. They murdered 3 billion innocent beings whose only crime was extending friendship to humanity. Today that crime receives its answer." The message continued with images from Thesara Prime, dead Vellani children in their crystal schools, families torn apart by Krell brutality, the singing forests turned to silent graveyards. "We do not seek your total destruction," the president's voice continued. "We seek justice. Your military will be dismantled. Your weapons will be destroyed. Your ability to threaten peaceful worlds will end forever. This is not negotiable." The Krell response came from high command within minutes. "Humans cannot breach our planetary defenses. Your threats are empty. Withdraw now or face annihilation." "Activate the resonance weapon," Ji-Hoon ordered quietly. What happened next defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about shield technology. The massive energy barriers protecting Vorthak Prime began to vibrate at specific frequencies. Instead of blocking incoming energy, they started absorbing it and converting it to heat. Chief Engineer Lim had studied Krell shield generators for months after capturing them in earlier battles. She discovered that their defensive systems could be turned into microwave emitters, with the right frequency modulation. The shields that were supposed to protect the planet were now slowly cooking every electronic system on the surface. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving thousands of distress calls from the surface. Their computers, their weapon systems, their life support, everything electronic is overheating." The planetary shields flickered and died within 3 hours, not because they were destroyed, but because the Krell had to shut them down to prevent their own cities from being burned from within. "Now," Ji-Hoon said simply. The human fleet struck like a hammer falling from space, but this was not the random destruction the Krell had brought to Thesara Prime. This was surgical, precise, focused entirely on military targets. Vice Admiral Sang Min-oh commanded the assault on the orbital defense platforms. His ships moved in perfect coordination, each one assigned specific targets. The massive weapon stations that had protected Krell space for centuries were reduced to drifting wreckage within hours. "Target the military command centers," Oh ordered. "Leave the residential areas alone." On the planet's surface, Krell civilians watched in amazement as human weapons destroyed army bases and weapon factories while leaving civilian buildings untouched. Schools, hospitals, and homes remained safe while military installations burned. The message was clear. Humanity could kill anyone they chose, but they chose to kill only those who had chosen to be soldiers. Captain Min Jun-yu led the final assault on the Krell High Command bunker. His Marines moved through the underground complex like a force of nature, but they followed strict rules of engagement. Any Krell who surrendered was spared. Any civilian was protected. Only those who continued to fight were eliminated. "Sir," one of his sergeants reported over the radio, "we've found the command chamber. The entire Krell leadership is inside." "Are they armed?" Yu asked. "No, sir. They're requesting terms for surrender. You felt a cold satisfaction. The proud warriors who had laughed while murdering Villani children were now begging for mercy from the species they had thought was weak. Tell them there are no terms, he said. Only consequences. The battle for Vorthak Prime lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Krell military had ceased to exist as an organized force. Every warship had been destroyed or captured. Every weapon factory had been reduced to slag. Every military leader was either dead or in human custody. But the planet's civilian population was unharmed. 15 billion Krell civilians found themselves under human occupation, but they were treated better than many of them had been treated by their own military government. The surrender ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. The surviving members of the Krell High Command were forced to sign the treaty in front of cameras from every major news network. The terms were harsh but fair. The Krell hegemony would pay reparations to Villani survivors for 10 generations. They would dismantle their war machine completely. They would be monitored by human peacekeeping forces. And if they ever threatened another peaceful species, humanity would return, not to conquer, but to exterminate. This is what happens to those who prey upon the innocent, Admiral Kang announced as the Krell leaders signed their surrender. Let every species in the galaxy remember this moment. The galaxy did remember. Within weeks, 3 other aggressive empires voluntarily began disarming their fleets and requesting peace negotiations with their neighbors. The message had been received. There was a new force among the stars, and it would not tolerate the strong preying upon the weak. 5 years later, Ambassador So Young Kim stood in the memorial garden on New Thesara, a beautiful world that humanity had gifted to the Villani survivors. The garden was a fusion of human and Villani biotechnology, where crystal trees sang in harmony with earth flowers. Elder Prism of Dawn approached her slowly. The ancient Villani was one of the few survivors of the original Thesera Council, and his crystal body had grown dim with age and sorrow. You brought justice for my people, the elder sang in his musical voice, but I must ask, at what cost to your own souls? Kim looked up at the stars, where human patrol fleets maintained their silent watch over the galaxy. Humanity had changed since the war. They were harder now, more focused, quicker to anger when innocent beings were threatened. Perhaps we were never as innocent as we like to believe, she said quietly. Perhaps this was always what we were meant to become. The guardians who do what others cannot. The fire that burns in the darkness so that others may live in the light. A group of young Villani approached them, their crystal bodies chiming with curiosity. These were the new generation, born after the massacre, raised on stories of the crystal cities they would never see. But they were not afraid. They knew that somewhere among the stars humanity was watching over them. Will the humans always protect us? One of the children asked in their singing voice. Kim knelt down to the child's level, her expression gentle but serious. As long as there are those who would hurt the innocent, there will be humans to stop them. This is our promise and our burden. That evening, Kim received a message from Earth. President Yoon, now in his 2nd term, had written his memoirs about the war years. The final passage had been sent to every human colony and diplomatic post. They asked us to be human, it read, to show them what our species was truly capable of. So we showed them our capacity for friendship, for loyalty, for justice. But we also showed them our capacity for terrible vengeance when those we love are threatened. We became what the galaxy needed us to become. The ones who watch in the darkness, the fire that burns against the cold, the guardians who ensure that never again will the strong destroy the weak simply because they can. As Kim finished reading, she looked out at the crystal trees singing their ancient songs under alien stars. The galaxy was safer now. Children of all species could sleep peacefully, knowing that someone was watching over them. Humanity had found its place among the stars. Not as conquerors or explorers, but as guardians. They were the species others called when the monsters came calling. And if that made them feared as well as respected, so be it. Some burdens were worth carrying. Some sacrifices were worth making. Some fires were worth keeping burning, no matter the cost. The stars themselves seemed to agree, shining a little brighter in the darkness, as if they too were grateful for the watchers who kept the light alive.